Chinese telecom giant Huawei wants to dominate the international market, and that's key to the Chinese Communist Party's plans. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest China news, and click the notification bell so you get an alert when we publish a new episode. Huawei. It's the largest telecom equipment maker in China and the entire world. How did this Chinese company become a global force in just a few short decades? Well, it was more than just their entrepreneurial spirit. It was largely thanks to the company's close relationship with the Chinese Communist Party, which explains why Huawei's phones redistribute all of your data to the Chinese regime. Huawei's relationship with the Chinese Communist Party is something the U.S. government has been worried about for years. But it's become international news following the arrest of Huawei's CFO Meng Wanzhou in Canada last December. The U.S. has filed criminal charges against Meng and Huawei for various forms of fraud and violating U.S. sanctions on Iran. Now, the U.S. wants to extradite Meng. Despite that, Huawei is still a critical part of the Chinese Communist Party's plan to become a world superpower, and the Chinese regime has pushed Huawei onto unsuspecting countries through its Belt and Road Initiative, also known as One Belt, One Road, which is much better than the original name, One Loan, One Debt Trap. Since the Belt and Road Initiative began in 2013, the Chinese regime has financed infrastructure projects in more than 60 countries. And while it might be hard to see Huawei's role in, say, building a bridge in Kenya that may or may not collapse, the telecom equipment maker is the digital bridge builder of the Belt and Road. In a March 2015 directive about the goals for the Belt and Road, Chinese authorities said two key objectives were the construction of transnational fiber optics for communications and synchronizing technological standards between China and other countries. And that's where Huawei comes in. According to one Huawei official speaking to Chinese media, different One Belt, One Road infrastructure projects would all require modern telecom equipment to allow systems to communicate with each other, prime business opportunities for Huawei. Huawei also received huge loans from the state-owned Silk Road Investment Fund and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which is backed by the Chinese regime. Here are 5 ways Huawei is being used for the Belt and Road Initiative. Number 5. Underwater internet cables. The internet may not be a series of tubes, but it is a series of cables, including thousands of miles of cables that run underneath the oceans, which is part of the reason why the Atlanteans are so mad at us surface dwellers. But really, the Atlanteans should direct their anger at Huawei Marine. It's a joint venture between Huawei and a UK-based submarine communications firm, Global Marine Systems. They built 7,000 miles of undersea cables. They called it the Peace Cable Project, which sounds super sketchy. It's an underwater high-speed internet cable system linking Pakistan, South Africa, Kenya, Somalia, Djibouti, Egypt, and France. They say it will be a new information expressway for China, Europe, and Africa, which is just what everyone wants. Internet brought to you by the world's worst abuser of internet freedom. According to the Huawei Marine COO, they were building enough underwater cable to circle the entire Earth. But they ran into a little undersea problem, and I don't mean Cthulhu. I'm talking about Australia. In June, the Australian government agreed to fund its own undersea internet cables for the Solomon Islands, leapfrogging Huawei's plans to build their cables there. According to Reuters, that was done because if Huawei had built it instead, it could have compromised Australian internet security. Number 4. Smart cities. You live in a dumb city. No, I'm not insulting the place you live. I'm just saying it's not a smart city. Similar to how a person's nervous system detects and reacts to changes in its environment, a smart city using Huawei's smart city solutions can sense, process, and deliver informed decisions that improves the environment for its inhabitants. That may sound pretty good, but remember that it's a company connected to the world's largest authoritarian regime that's saying it can sense, process, and deliver informed decisions that affect its inhabitants. And according to a 2015 research paper from China's State Information Center, smart cities could help lead the Belt and Road Initiative. The paper applauded Huawei for undertaking an important role in building smart cities in other countries. And what would a top feature of these smart cities designed by a company with shady links to the Chinese Communist Party be? Why, better governance. I'm shivering. And it's not the polar vortex. I think it's something to do with how the Chinese Communist Party uses that same technology in China to harass and monitor its own population. And the Belt and Road Initiative, using Huawei technology, is trying to export that model. According to the Jamestown Foundation, while the smart cities of the future could be better, more efficient cities, they could also provide authoritarian regimes with previously undreamt of tools of surveillance and control. Why, let's take a look at one example of a Huawei Belt and Road smart city, Astana, the capital of Kazakhstan. It began its transformation into a smart city in 2016. To start with, that meant Huawei adding around 10,000 surveillance cameras. What a wonderful contribution to an authoritarian state. In fact, Jamestown notes, it is both interesting and suggestive that the list of countries where Huawei's safe city solutions were first deployed includes a number of authoritarian and hybrid regimes with close ties to China, among them Russia, Pakistan, Venezuela, Laos, and Angola. And since that worked out so well for them, Germany is now interested as well. But don't worry, there's no way Germany could ever transform into an authoritarian state. Number 3, smart energy. Can't have a smart city without smart energy. That's why Huawei is now selling smart energy systems to oil-producing countries and companies, which, turns out, are also usually authoritarian regimes. Go figure. Some of these contracts Huawei has are official Belt and Road projects. One of the major strategic goals of the Belt and Road Initiative is to funnel global oil supplies to China, which struggles to keep up with growing energy needs. But it's not just oil. Shanghai Electric, a subsidiary of China's state-owned construction company Power China, is building a new solar power plant in Argentina. According to the Huawei website, it is the first successful project in Argentina after the Belt and Road Initiative proposed by China. And the project adopts Huawei's smart solutions, which may include connecting Huawei technology to the power grid. Wow, great idea, giving the Chinese Communist Party easy access to your nation's power supply. Number 2, national emergency systems. Ecuador has hitched its trailer to the Belt and Road. A big part of that was the ECU 911 National Emergency System. It was built by China's state-owned China National Electronics Import and Export Corporation, and they turned to Huawei for their facial recognition surveillance cameras, routers, wireless access points, network switches, and wireless access controllers. So basically, using the excuse of providing Ecuador with the National Emergency Service, China got to install an all-seeing eye. First of all, that's a cyber espionage threat. But beyond that, it risks exporting the Communist Party's authoritarianism around the world. Countries like Ecuador may have difficulties acquiring sophisticated types of surveillance. Of course, they can buy it off the shelf, but what China can give them is a whole system, from physical centers to processing software. And when they export those systems, it's not just the physical aspect, but the political norms that come with them. So Chinese investment, backed by state-owned enterprises and Huawei, might come with a bit more than a lot of countries bargained for. And finally, number 1, 5G. 5G is the future of wireless communication, and companies around the world are trying to dominate the market. According to the New York Times, a Huawei spokesman said it had been working on 5G since 2009, having spent $600 million on related research already and committing $800 million more in 2018 alone. And Huawei owns about 10% of 5G essential patents. This could be a big win for Huawei. It could pocket licensing fees from both government and mobile service providers that use a Huawei 5G network. This report by US-based think tank Center for Strategic and International Studies shows that Huawei leads the world in manufacturing a certain vital component of 5G service, the Radio Access Network, or RAN. RAN is what connects your mobile phone to the network. If Huawei gained control of the world's 5G networks, it means the Chinese Communist Party could also get access, and that would create mayhem and mass surveillance, according to a retired US general. However, Huawei's 5G ambitions may not be coming to fruition. countries around the world have begun banning Huawei from working with their governments and building their 5G networks. For a rundown on that, check out my recent episode, How 8 Countries Are Dealing with Huawei. So, what do you think of how Huawei is getting in on China's Belt and Road Initiative? Leave your comments below. And before I go, now is the time when I answer questions from you, my loyal 50 Cent Army, fans of the show who support what we do through the crowdfunding website Patreon. Joe Rue asks, with Xi Jinping's consolidation of power mostly complete, is there even a small chance that he will invoke his power to make China democratic, or even democratic with Chinese characteristics? What Xi Jinping ultimately will do is the million yuan question. However, I don't want you to have the misconception that Xi is an untouchable, all-powerful leader. There's still infighting going on within the Communist Party. China is facing unprecedented economic and social changes. The U.S.-China trade war is just one of them, and Xi will get all the credit or blame for however it all goes down. And if Xi Jinping can't save the ship by doubling down on the Chinese Communist Party, he may try to pull a Gorbachev, dissolve the Communist Party, and make China democratic, or, as you said, democratic with Chinese characteristics, which could mean less like Taiwan and more like Vladimir Putin's Russia. Xi Jinping is politically very savvy. If he feels democracy is the best option, or the least bad available option, he may try it. But don't hold your breath for China creating a democracy as open as Taiwan. There is a small chance, but these things are very hard to predict. Thanks for your question, Joe. If you'd like to hear your question answered on the show, sign up to support China Uncensored on the crowdfunding website Patreon. It's less than the cost of your daily cup of coffee. Thanks for watching this episode of China Uncensored. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.